and that is parental responsibility. In it thou shalt not do any work. Thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, and then we're told, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. So not just servants, sons. God addresses those who are in positions of headship and authority over others. So that we say to you this morning, fathers, you have the responsibility to see to it that your household, in particular your children, all who are under your roof, are keeping the Lord's Day holy. Well, that means you need to think. You need to engage. Consider your younger children. Do you think your younger children will be able to sanctify the Lord's Day without your help? They don't know how to keep the Lord's Day holy. You need to teach them. And in so teaching them, you need to instruct them, like Isaiah chapter 58, to call the Sabbath a delight. Because if you don't, this will almost certainly happen. Your children will grow up to see the Lord's Day as a day of drudgery, and they will resent the Sabbath day because you have never taken any time with them to teach them and to bring them to appreciate the joy and the beauty of this day. So they grow up in your home, and all of their thoughts about the Sabbath day are negative. The only thing that you do is tell them when they're not doing something right. The only thing that you instruct them in are the things that they are not to be doing. How about positively instructing your children to keep the Lord's Day? Think of all the things that you could do. We touched on some of them last week. Not only can you talk to them about the sermon, you could play games and have quizzes with them so that they are learning the things of God. You could do something fun with them in memorizing the Catechism and give them incentives so that they come to enjoy this. A friend of mine back in the UK told me that when he was growing up, his family had a Lord's Day bag, and it would hang on a nail in the living room. And on the Lord's Day bag came down, and there were things to colour in and scripture texts to colour and memorize, and there were games to play, and there was candy and things like that. And the children loved the Lord's Day bag so much that they asked their mother throughout the week, can we get the Lord's Day bag down? What a difference. They were wanting the other days of the week to be like the Lord's Day, these children. They weren't wanting the Lord's Day to be like the other days of the week. Consider your young children. Consider your older children. Society says that they will get to a certain age when they are not children. And they may live under your roof, but they are not under your authority. But God sees things very differently. No matter what age those children are, they are not free to desecrate the Lord's Day in your home. They are not free to desecrate the Lord's Day in your home. And I have seen this issue come up many times. Not just out there, but in churches in our own denomination. God says, in it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger who is within thy gates. But what I'm talking about is this. The child grows up and refuses to go to church. And the parent feels that there is nothing that they can do. They're teenagers. They're grown up. They're adults. They have to make up their own mind. I cannot force them. Yes, you can. Imagine if the state was to function like that with its enforcement of the law. That people grew up in society and said, well, now I'm an adult. I don't like that law, so I'm not going to keep it. I'm going to make my own laws in this nation. But I'm going to continue living in the country. There would be an absolute outcry. And rightly so. We are not disputing that your grown-up children have their own mind. But we are saying that as parents, God requires you to enforce His law in your home. And you are not to make your children an idol in refusing to do so. Your younger children and your older children are not God. Not only may you command them to keep the Sabbath day, God requires you to command them to keep the Sabbath day. And God holds you accountable for their not keeping the Sabbath day in your house. Well, you get a fearful parent and they say, I can't do that. I can't do that. My child will never agree to it. Okay, show them the door. In fact, bring them up in your house so that they know never even to dare to say to you, I'm not going to church today. Bring them up to know that. Here's an example of how the fourth commandment suffers, because parents generally in Reformed, conservative, evangelical churches would never allow this to happen in relation to another of God's commandment. Imagine the young man saying to his father, well, I'm just going to bring my girlfriend home and we're going to fornicate. She's coming into my room, she's coming into my bed, and I'm going to fornicate under your roof. The parent's going to say, absolutely no way. Well, why would you allow that to happen in terms of the fourth commandment? Why would you allow it to happen in terms of the fourth commandment, when it's so patently obvious that you ought not to do it with the seventh commandment? But then you have visitors, don't you? The stranger who is within your gates. And God says the point of responsibility extends to the stranger within your gates, not just your family members. Well, here's something else where God challenges our social etiquette and our view of hospitality. The fourth commandment applies to those who are staying in your house over the Sabbath. And it may be a non-Christian family member. And you say, you are so welcome to come and stay with us. But I want you to know that if you stay in our house over the Lord's Day, you will be expected to come to church with us. Now they might say, no, I prefer to stay somewhere else. So be it. But the stranger who is within your gates are required by you to observe and honor God's day. Because your guests are not God either. Your children are not God. Your guests are not God. God is God. So in all of these instances, individuals are accountable for their own breach of the Sabbath day. But God will hold heads of families accountable for what is done under the roof. Well, you've seen it in the commandment itself. We have a question devoted to this in our larger catechism. Why is the charge of keeping the Sabbath more specially directed to governors of families and other superiors? The answer is this. The charge of keeping the Sabbath is more specially directed to governors of families and other superiors because they are bound not only to keep it themselves, but to see that it be observed by all those that are under their charge, and because they are prone oft times to hinder them by employments of their own. Now, there's nothing hard to work out there. The commandment itself states it. No deductions needed. All we need is application of the truth that is stated. There is a parental responsibility.